All right, let's dive in. Today we're taking a closer look at the 1970s psychological thriller Goodbye, Gemini.
Oh, interesting.
We've got a pretty detailed review to guide us, and I gotta say, this film is, well, it's not your average thriller. It's got this dark, unsettling vibe, all about sibling obsession, set in London's swinging 70s scene.
Ah, the 70s. Such a fascinating time, that cultural revolution, all that social liberation. The film really uses that vibrancy as like a contrast.
A contrast to what?
To the darkness of the character's inner world. It's like putting something beautiful next to something, well, disturbing. And it lets you see both at the same time.
Yeah, I see that. The review talks about this push and pull between external gloss and internal darkness, almost as if the film is deliberately trying to make us feel uncomfortable with how closely beauty and danger can coexist.
Exactly.
So, give us the rundown. What's the story in Goodbye, Gemini?
Well, it centers around these twins, Jacki and Julian.
Twins, okay.
And their bond is, how should I put it? A little too close for comfort.
I'm sensing some trouble already.
They arrive in London and get caught up in that whole scene, the nightlife, the hedonism, all under the influence of this, well, manipulative guy named Clive.
Ah, so there's our string puller.
You got it.
Yeah.
And from there, let's just say things take a pretty dark turn, leading to a tragic end.
Okay, so we've got twins with a creepy close bond, a city known for its excesses, and a character who's pulling the strings. But what makes Goodbye, Gemini different from other films exploring similar themes?
A few things, actually. It really delves into some taboo subjects, especially for the time it was made. We're talking innocence corrupted, sexual ambiguity, those kind of things.
Sounds intense.
It is. And the film doesn't shy away from any of it. It leans right into that discomfort, and that's what adds these layers of complexity to the story.
So it's not just trying to thrill you, it's using that thriller format to explore these darker sides of, like, society and human nature.
Exactly. It's like the film is asking what happens when we push those boundaries of what's considered acceptable. What's lurking beneath the surface of supposedly liberated times.
Right, like a dark undercurrent. And to bring these themes to life, we have Judy Geeson and Martin Potter as the twins, both giving performances that the review calls compelling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Geeson, as Jacki, she does an amazing job portraying that slow descent from innocence to unease. You really feel her realizing how controlling her brother is.
It's like a dawning realization.
Yeah. And then there's Potter, as Julian. He's got this charisma that's both attractive and unsettling, which is a tough balance to strike.
I can imagine.
His performance really highlights that blurry line between possessiveness and, well, almost predatory behavior.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating, even disturbing about these kinds of relationships on screen. We can be drawn to someone even when we see those red flags.
You're so right.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget Alexis Kanner playing Clive, the one who set so much of the twins' downward spiral in motion. He's got that, sleazy charm that makes you instantly distrust him. You just know he's bad news.
The kind of guy you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley.
Definitely not.
So we've got this trio of fascinating, flawed characters. But the film's visuals also seem to play a big role. The review talks about the cinematography capturing both the allure and the grime of 1970s London.
Oh, absolutely. The city's like another character in this twisted story. Those neon lights, smoky nightclubs, and shadowy backstreets, it's also vividly brought to life. The cinematographer, Geoffrey Unsworth, really knew how to use light and shadow to create a mood.
I read about the use of Dutch angles, especially when framing the twins. What's the thinking behind that?
Oh, good catch. A Dutch angle is where the camera's tilted, so the horizon in the shot is off-kilter.
Ah, I see.
It creates a sense of unease, disorientation,
Yeah.
which is perfect for reflecting the off-kilter relationship between the twins. It's like the film is visually telling us something's not right with these two.
Yeah, like a visual warning sign.
Yeah.
And it's not just what we see. The review also mentions the soundtrack. Does the music play a role in building this unsettling atmosphere?
For sure. It's a really interesting mix of jazz and psychedelic stuff with these eerie ambient tones. So you'll have these moments of, carefree hedonism, and then suddenly this creeping sense of dread, and the music just mirrors that perfectly.
It's like a sonic roller coaster.
It is. Think of it like the music in Jaws, but instead of a shark, it's this psychological tension that's about to get you.
Okay, now I'm getting chills just thinking about it. So, complex characters, a visually striking setting, a score that messes with your head, it sounds like. Goodbye, Gemini has all the makings of a really effective thriller. But the review does mention some criticisms, right?
Yeah, one of the main ones, the pacing. especially in the first half. Some people might find it a bit slow, especially for a genre that's usually known for like fast-paced action and twists.
I can see that. I was thinking about that pacing issue, the slowness. The review says that the director, Alan Gibson, really focused on mood and character instead of, just going for a straightforward plot. Do you think that was intentional?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely deliberate, that slow-burning tension. Instead of just going for those cheap thrills, he lets the characters and that twisted dynamic simmer.
Simmer, yeah. I get that.
He uses that extra time to explore themes like, moral decay, the dangers of being codependent. But it's not in your face. It's more suggestive than explicit. It doesn't hit you over the head with its message. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's subtle. You've mentioned moral decay a couple of times. What does that actually look like in the film? Is it connected to the whole swinging 70s thing?
It's definitely there, but subtle, like you said. Remember those amazing nightclub scenes we talked about? The ones Unsworth shot so beautifully? Well, they're not just about the visuals. They represent this whole society, pushing those boundaries, experimenting, but also maybe losing its footing a little.
Losing its footing.
Yeah, like a sense of things going too far. And the twins, they get caught up in this world, and their bond, which is already unhealthy, it gets even more distorted.
So you're saying that the city, that atmosphere of freedom and excess, it's actually fueling their destructive behavior.
Precisely. The setting isn't just background. It's an active part of their downfall. And remember those close-ups we talked about? As the film goes on, they get tighter, almost claustrophobic, especially when the twins are together. Visually, we're trapped with them as their world shrinks.
It's like the film is intentionally making us feel uncomfortable, showing us how isolating those kinds of intense relationships can be, even when they're surrounded by people.
We got it. And the editing does that too. Some scenes are fragmented, jumpy. It's like we're seeing things through their eyes, as they're falling apart. The film keeps us off balance, the same way the characters are.
Wow, I never thought about editing that way, but it makes sense. But it's not just the visuals, right? We were talking about the score earlier. How does that play into the whole feeling of unease?
The soundtrack, it's brilliant. It shifts between this seductive, jazzy sound. It captures the nightlife, and then suddenly these eerie, almost discordant sounds. Yeah, clashing, jarring. It's like the film is giving us this auditory warning. Something isn't right here.
Like a musical red flag. So complex characters, a really visual setting, a score that messes with your head. But this slow-burning style, like we said, it seems to be a problem for some viewers.
You're right. Some folks just prefer a faster pace, especially in a thriller. They want those clear plot points, those twists and turns.
Yeah, to keep them on the edge of their seats.
Exactly. But goodbye, Gemini. It doesn't give you that. It's about mood, atmosphere. You have to be patient with it. And I guess not everyone is willing to do that.
And the ambiguity probably doesn't help. The review mentions that some critics didn't like the lack of clear-cut answers. We never get a full explanation for the twins' behavior, do we?
Nope. And that's on purpose. The director leaves a lot open to interpretation. Why are they so codependent? What are they really after? Goodbye, Gemini doesn't want to give you those easy answers. It wants you to wrestle with those questions.
I actually like that. So many films just spoon-feed the audience, leave nothing to the imagination. This feels like a conversation, a challenge to the viewer.
I agree. It makes you an active part of the story. It respects your intelligence, trusts you to figure things out on your own.
Even if those conclusions are unsettling. Because, let's face it, this isn't a happy-go-lucky film.
Not at all. But that's part of its power. It sticks with you. It makes you think about the darker parts of human nature long after it's over. And the performances, they definitely help with that. The review praises both Geeson and Potter. I'm especially drawn to Potter as Julian. He does that whole charming but menacing thing so well.
Yeah, I agree. He's one of those characters you love to hate. He's awful, but you just can't look away. Geeson, too, is fantastic. She really shows Jacki's vulnerability and her slowly realizing how toxic their relationship is.
They both bring this raw intensity to their roles, for sure. You feel the claustrophobia of their bond, the way they feed off each other's darkness. And it's interesting because despite all the darkness, the review actually gives the film a positive rating. It highlights those performances, the unsettling atmosphere, and those incredible visuals.
So it's intentionally paced, visually stunning, and has some great acting. But it doesn't shy away from tough topics and doesn't give you easy answers. Would you say that makes Goodbye Gemini a challenging film to watch?
Challenging, yeah, but rewarding. It's not for everyone. If you want a lighthearted popcorn flick, skip this one. But if you like a film that makes you think, feel, and question things, then Goodbye Gemini is worth checking out.
It definitely stays with you. And that brings up a point that the review makes. Goodbye Gemini is very much a product of its time, but the themes it explores, they feel relevant even today.
Yeah, it's amazing how much it resonates with modern audiences. Sibling dependency, the allure of excess, the breakdown of moral boundaries. These are all things we're still dealing with, maybe even more so now.
And it makes you wonder if it's technology that's making these issues worse, or if they've always been there, just hidden under the surface, like the swinging 70s with all that talk of liberation. It's kind of like today with social media and, everyone wanting everything instantly.
It is a fascinating parallel, right? That desire to connect, the pressure to be seen, the way boundaries get blurred. Goodbye Gemini touches on all of that, and it just feels so relevant to our world now.
Like maybe under all the progress we've made, human nature hasn't really changed that much. Are we more susceptible to these dark impulses now, or are we just more aware of them because of things like social media?
That's the big question, isn't it? And Goodbye Gemini doesn't really give us an easy answer. It's more like it holds up a mirror and makes us confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in. It's unsettling, but it definitely makes you think.
I think that's why this film is still so powerful all these years later. It's not just about a specific time. It's about something deeper, something that speaks to us no matter what generation we're from.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, could a film like Goodbye Gemini even be made today? Would modern audiences have the patience for a film that unfolds so slowly? Would they be okay with all the ambiguity, all the unanswered questions?
It's a good question. We're so used to instant gratification, to having everything explained to us. A film that asks this much of the viewer, that trusts them to think for themselves and feel things, it's almost a radical idea now.
It is. And that's what makes rediscovering films like Goodbye Gemini so important, I think. They remind us that movies can be more than just entertainment. They can challenge us, make us think, and stay with us long after we've seen them.
I completely agree. And we've really only scratched the surface of Goodbye Gemini. There's so much to unpack, so many questions to consider.
That's what makes it so great. It rewards you for watching it again and again. Each time you see it, you notice something new, something that makes you think. It's like it wants to have a conversation with you.
So for our listeners who haven't seen Goodbye Gemini yet, I definitely recommend it. Just know going in that it's a slow burn, and it's a story that will stay with you.
And don't expect simple answers. It's a film that's okay with ambiguity. It wants you to figure things out for yourself.
It asks more questions than it answers. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the best art, the art that makes you really think, is the kind that doesn't give you all the answers.
Absolutely. Those unanswered questions, that feeling of unease, that's what keeps us thinking, keeps us engaged.
So on that note, I think we've done a pretty deep dive into Goodbye Gemini. We've talked about the plot, the characters, all the ways it was made, the themes, and how it's still relevant today.
It's been a really interesting conversation, and I hope our listeners got something out of it.
And for those of you who have seen Goodbye Gemini, we'd love to hear what you think. Share your thoughts with us on social media. Tell us what you think it all means, and let's keep this discussion going.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your take on it. We're always interested in hearing different perspectives and exploring the world of cinema.
Well, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those minds engaged. Thanks for listening.